Managing Digital Distraction, Evidence-Based Strategies for Organizational Performance Abstract. Digital distraction represents a persistent challenge to organizational productivity and employee well-being in contemporary workplaces. This article synthesizes research on attention fragmentation, task switching costs, and cognitive load to examine how digital tools, while enabling connectivity and collaboration, simultaneously undermine sustained focus and deep work. Drawing on established cognitive psychology research and organizational behavior studies, the analysis explores quantified impacts on individual performance, team dynamics, and organizational outcomes. The article presents evidence-based interventions including structured communication protocols, psychological safety frameworks, and capability-building programs that organizations have implemented to address attention management challenges. Forward-looking recommendations emphasize cultural norms around focus, distributed decision-making authority, and continuous learning systems that balance collaborative connectivity with concentrated cognitive work. The typical knowledge worker now operates in an ecosystem of competing attentional demands. Email notifications, instant messages, collaborative platform alerts, and video calls create a continuous stream of interruptions that fragment attention throughout the workday. Research on human cognition has established that attentional resources are finite and that context switching carries measurable cognitive costs. Gonzalez and Mark. 2004. Mark et al. 2008. This tension matters because routine tasks increasingly yield to automation, while competitive advantage accrues to organizations whose workers can engage in what Newport, 2016, terms deep work, cognitively demanding activities that create new value, develop skills, and solve novel problems. When digital distraction prevents workers from achieving the sustained attention states necessary for this deep work, organizational performance suffers beyond individual productivity metrics. The stakes are particularly high for professional services firms, technology companies, financial institutions, and other knowledge-intensive organizations where human cognitive output represents the primary value creation mechanism. This article examines digital distraction through an organizational lens, synthesizing cognitive research with workplace studies to understand both consequences and responses. The digital workplace attention landscape defining attention fragmentation in knowledge work. Attention fragmentation occurs when cognitive resources repeatedly shift between tasks, contexts, or information sources before completing meaningful work units. Unlike simple task switching, attention fragmentation in digital environments involves involuntary interruptions, rapid context changes, and shallow processing across multiple simultaneous streams. Cognitive load theory helps explain why this pattern proves problematic. Sweller, 1988. Human working memory capacity remains fundamentally limited. When workers attempt to process email while listening to a video call while monitoring chat messages, each information stream consumes working memory resources. The cognitive system must process each stream's content while maintaining awareness of multiple contexts, overhead that reduces capacity available for actual problem solving. Research by Mark and colleagues documented that knowledge workers average approximately 3 minutes on any single task before switching or being interrupted, with subsequent tasks often unrelated to the original work. Mark et al. 2008. Returning to an interrupted task typically requires substantial time to regain the previous level of cognitive engagement. Mark et al. 2016. Prevalence and drivers. Digital distraction has become sufficiently widespread that most knowledge workers now consider it a standard workplace experience. Several organizational and technological factors drive this prevalence. Communication tool proliferation creates multiple channels requiring monitoring. Organizations often adopt new tools to solve specific coordination problems without retiring existing channels, leading to tool accumulation rather than strategic replacement. Responsiveness norms establish implicit expectations around reply times and availability. Research by Pillow, 2012, documented how these norms emerge through social dynamics, with responsiveness patterns becoming self-reinforcing as rapid replies establish baselines that others feel compelled to match. Synchronous collaboration increases reflect beneficial aspects of digital tools, the ability to coordinate across locations and solve problems collectively in real time. However, synchronous work by definition creates interruptions to individual focus time. And organizational norms may overuse synchronous modes even for activities that could proceed asynchronously. Notification design in commercial software frequently prioritizes engagement over user control, with opt-out rather than opt-in architectures requiring explicit effort to modify. Organizational and individual consequences. Organizational performance impacts. Digital distraction affects organizational performance through multiple mechanisms, though isolating precise quantitative effects proves challenging given the complex nature of knowledge work outcomes. Productivity and throughput effects emerge from both interruption recovery time and cognitive switching costs. When workers require substantial time to regain focus after interruptions, cumulative productivity losses may be substantial, though effects likely vary based on task type. Quality and error impacts represent a particularly concerning consequence. Cognitive load research indicates that working memory constraints increase error likelihood when system demands exceed capacity. Sweller, 1988. In professional contexts where accuracy carries high stakes, financial modeling, software development, medical diagnosis, legal analysis, even modest error rate increases could generate substantial organizational costs. Innovation and creative problem-solving may be especially vulnerable to attention fragmentation. Csikszentmihalyi, 1997, research on flow states, periods of intense focus that facilitate peak performance and creative insight, suggests that reaching these states requires sustained, undisturbed concentration. Individual well-being and stakeholder impacts. Digital distraction affects human experience beyond productivity metrics, with implications for employee satisfaction, stress levels, and work-life integration. Cognitive fatigue and stress accumulate when workers maintain divided attention throughout workdays. Research on self-control suggests that resisting distractions requires regulatory effort that depletes finite cognitive resources. Baumeister et al. 2007. Work-life boundary erosion intensifies when digital tools enable constant connectivity. Smartphones and cloud-based applications make work accessible outside traditional hours, creating expectations of availability that extend workdays indefinitely. Pillow, 2012. Learning and skill development require sustained engagement with challenging material. Developing expertise demands deliberate practice, focused attention on skill-building activities with immediate feedback. Erickson et al. 1993. When professionals cannot access extended focus periods, their skill acquisition trajectories may flatten. Healthcare organizations have implemented protocols limiting digital interruptions during specific clinical activities, reflecting concerns that divided attention during patient interactions could compromise both care quality and patient experience. Evidence-based organizational responses. Structured communication protocols and temporal boundaries. Organizations have implemented various approaches to reduce unnecessary interruptions while preserving collaborative benefits of digital tools. Communication channel designation involves explicitly defining appropriate uses for different tools. Organizations might designate email for non-urgent communication, instant messaging for time-sensitive coordination, and synchronous meetings for complex discussions requiring real-time interaction. When combined with clear guidance about response time expectations, these distinctions help workers prioritize attention appropriately. Quiet hours or focus blocks create organization-wide or team-level periods during which synchronous interruptions cease. Boston Consulting Group piloted predictable time off protocols where team members received guaranteed uninterrupted time periods. Consultants reported reduced stress, while the firm found that protecting focus time correlated with improved project outcomes. Pillow. 2012. Asynchronous first communication norms encourage workers to default toward communication modes that don't require immediate recipient attention. Software company GitLab emphasizes written documentation. Explicitly discourages synchronous meetings except when genuinely necessary. And creates cultural norms around not expecting immediate responses. Meeting hygiene practices reduce interruptions from poorly designed collaborative sessions, agenda requirements, declining meetings that lack clear objectives, attendance criteria, including only individuals who need to contribute, duration defaults, scheduling 25 or 50-minute meetings with buffer time, device policies. Establishing norms around technology use during meetings, standing meetings, audits, periodically reviewing recurring meetings, psychological safety and autonomy frameworks. Effective distraction management requires cultural dimensions beyond structural protocols. Workers must feel safe declining interruptions, setting boundaries around availability, and prioritizing deep work over constant responsiveness. Psychological safety research by Edmondson, 1999, established that team members perform better when they trust they can take interpersonal risks without negative consequences. Organizations addressing digital distraction must cultivate cultures where workers can decline meeting invitations, delay responses to non-urgent communications, and block calendar time for focused work. Creating this safety requires visible leadership modeling. When senior leaders protect their own focus time and respond asynchronously rather than immediately, permission cascades through organizational levels. Technology company Shopify implemented no meeting Wednesdays across the entire organization, with senior executives modeling the practice. Autonomy over work methods enables workers to manage their attention according to task demands and personal work styles. Effective approaches include personal focus time scheduling, allowing workers to block calendar time at periods matching their energy patterns, notification customization, providing tools for workers to configure notifications based on role requirements, location choice, supporting workers in selecting environments that facilitate concentration, response time expectations, setting channel-specific guidelines while permitting individual variation. Manager capability building ensures that supervisors support rather than undermine attention management efforts. Training interventions can help managers assess task urgency accurately, communicate response expectations explicitly, and evaluate output quality rather than responsiveness as the primary performance indicator. Technology configuration and digital tool stewardship. Strategic technology stewardship enables organizations to shape digital tools in service of attention management goals. Enterprise notification policies establish organizational defaults that reduce unnecessary interruptions. IT departments can disable non-essential notifications by default. Implement quiet hours, distinguish urgency levels, and aggregate low-priority updates into periodic digests. Status indicator norms use presence management features thoughtfully. Organizations can establish shared understanding that busy status indicates focus time when interruptions should wait, and that scheduled focus blocks represent legitimate commitments equivalent to meetings. Alternative collaboration models use digital tools for coordination while preserving focus time, documentation-first processes, creating written records before synchronous discussions. Office hours models, designating specific times for synchronous availability. Project phase separation, alternating between individual exploration and synchronous coordination. Software development firm Basecamp emphasizes tools and processes that support coordination without requiring real-time presence. Using project management software designed for longer-form writing rather than rapid messaging. Focus infrastructure investment organizations have made financial investments to create physical and technological infrastructure supporting sustained focus. Focus room design provides spaces optimized for concentration work. including acoustic treatment, visual privacy, booking systems, and proximity distribution throughout facilities. Furniture manufacturer Steelcase has designed office spaces incorporating enclaves, small, enclosed spaces for focused individual work. Technology stipends enable workers to configure workspaces for focus through noise-cancelling headphones, secondary displays, ergonomic furniture, and mobile hotspots. Retreat and off-site investments create periodic intensive focus opportunities. Consulting firm Bain & Company periodically sends consultant teams to off-site locations for multi-day intensive project work, explicitly removing them from normal communication streams. Building long-term organizational attention capability. Cultural norms around focus as legitimate work. Sustainable attention management requires shifting organizational cultures to recognize focused, uninterrupted work as valuable rather than viewing constant availability as the primary performance signal. Redefining productivity metrics to evaluate output quality and meaningful accomplishment rather than responsiveness speed. Organizations must develop assessment approaches that recognize completion of complex deliverables, innovation contributions, and problem-solving quality. Leadership visibility around personal attention management practices signals organizational permission for boundary setting. When executives model protective behaviors, they establish norms that cascade through organizational levels. Recognition systems that celebrate focused work accomplishments help balance attention allocation. Organizations might spotlight deep work achievements, reward thoughtful meeting declinations, and share attention management practices as professional development topics. Distributed authority and decision rights. Constant interruptions partly reflect organizational structures where decision authority concentrates at hierarchical levels. Distributing authority more broadly can reduce coordination demands. Decision rights mapping clarifies who holds authority for different choices, reducing unnecessary consultation. Organizations can explicitly define autonomous decision domains, consultation requirements, approval thresholds, and transparency needs. Team empowerment enables collaborative units to coordinate internally without constant outside communication. Research on self-managing teams suggests that groups with clear boundaries, defined objectives, and authority to determine work methods often outperform traditionally managed teams. Hackman, 2002. Technology company Spotify implemented squad structures, small, cross-functional teams with end-to-end responsibility for specific product features, deliberately reducing coordination demands by concentrating decision authority within empowered teams. Continuous learning and adaptation systems. Attention management represents a dynamic challenge requiring ongoing organizational learning as technologies and work practices evolve. Attention impact assessment incorporates distraction considerations into project planning. Organizations might estimate attention costs when introducing new tools, pilot initiatives before broad deployment, and adjust designs based on actual experience. Communities of practice around attention management enable peer learning and experimentation. Research suggests that peer learning often proves more effective than top-down training for adopting complex practices in contextually variable situations. Wenger, 1998. Longitudinal monitoring tracks how attention patterns and intervention effectiveness evolve over time. Organizations might establish regular assessment cycles examining employee well-being indicators, performance metrics, engagement scores, and retention patterns. Conclusion: digital distraction represents a significant but manageable challenge for contemporary organizations. Research clearly establishes that attention fragmentation carries cognitive costs, productivity impacts, and well-being implications that organizations cannot ignore. However, the solution does not lie in rejecting digital technologies but in thoughtfully designing work systems that preserve collaborative benefits while creating protected space for sustained cognitive engagement. The most effective approaches share several characteristics: They recognize that attention management requires organizational action rather than individual willpower alone. They provide clear frameworks while enabling autonomy. They address both formal systems and cultural norms. And they treat attention management as ongoing capability building rather than a one-time problem. Organizations pursuing attention management can begin with practical steps, assess current state through surveys, observational studies, or workplace analytics. Pilot-focused interventions in specific teams before organization-wide deployment. Build psychological safety where workers can protect focus time without negative consequences. Model from leadership through visible demonstration of attention management practices. Measure and refine based on empirical results. Competitive advantage increasingly accrues to organizations whose workers can engage in deep, sustained cognitive work that creates genuine value. Addressing digital distraction represents not a peripheral concern but a strategic imperative for knowledge-intensive organizations. Those that successfully balance collaborative connectivity with protected focus time position themselves to attract talent, develop capabilities, produce higher quality outputs, and maintain sustainable performance in demanding environments.